Now to a dire warning about climate change. According to a new report, experts say that we have until 2030 to avoid catastrophe. It also says if unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet. The report focuses on what could happen if global temperatures rise by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. It would likely mean more erratic weather, dangerous heat waves, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs.
Thank you for listening. This is Earl, your angsty dad, Out of the Wild podcast. I have my good friend Mike Jenkins here. We're going to talk about the environment, which surprisingly is not something we talked about much on this show, and we need to talk about more. There have been studies recently, without going into too much detail, that basically have told us that we must prevent the increase of the world's average temperature. If it goes up 1.5 degrees Celsius, we're fucked. We're really fucked. Especially places that are vulnerable, such as the coast, like the eastern seaboard here. Places like India and Pakistan in the Middle East, where the temperatures are so hot already that roads are melting. We have to reduce carbon emission to zero.
Like in 2 years.
Yeah,
3 years.
like essentially, like in the next decade.
ASAP.
And the president doesn't think it's a problem. But we essentially have to reduce, and that means not, when you think carbon emissions, you think cars, you think trucks, you think airplanes. There's a lot of things that people don't think about when it has to do carbon emissions, such as eating red meat. The waste that's produced from that causes methane and other gases to go up into the environment. It's terrible for the environment. There are all kinds of ways that we are fucking up with our carbon footprint, including the way we dispose of bodies, including the way we dispose of waste, dispose of food. You're going to talk about something pretty specific to our carbon problem.
So I've just recently started becoming educated in some of these issues.
Right.
Very, very recently. And I guess I just want to share some information because you never know where solutions come from. And one of you listeners, I don't know, could have an incredible idea out of nowhere.
Let's hope so, because we need some good ideas. But the ones that they have so far are pretty bad.
Yeah. So one thing that I've been really looking into is just drilling and how we drill and things like that. I actually first became interested in this when I was working in Alaska, which I don't know if you've listened to the past episode that I was on, but I'm a commercial salmon fisherman in Alaska. And I learned a lot about mining when I was up there, specifically up there, gold mining with pebble mine, which is a large problem in Alaska and could affect our source of salmon and other seafoods, but that's a whole other issue. But in doing so, I learned something about flaring, which is whenever we drill, there is something called associated natural gases, which are released during the process, which is mostly methane.
Right.
And in drilling, which is drilling for crude oil, they drill down, and in doing so, there are greenhouse gases emitted that we try to capture as much as we can. But they're saying that energy companies flare as much as 1/3 of the gas they produce.
Okay, so
now flaring is, as they're producing these natural gases, some of it escapes, and so instead of releasing it into the atmosphere, we burn it, which is actually the safest way to dispose of it currently. In the short term.
Which is crazy.
In the short term. In the long term, we're burning off methane mostly, which is 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period as a greenhouse gas.
So essentially, what's happening is when we're burning all this shit, we're sending all of the toxins essentially into the atmosphere.
Yes.
And that's what's helping. That's one of the things that's helping contribute to the warming of our planet.
And so the actual safest method of disposal is usage, which is building investing in building infrastructure to capture, process, and distribute this resource for usage, which still is not clean.
Right.
We're still burning these fuels. We're just burning them productively, which makes us burn them slower. That's really the only pro to this, is we're not burning them just because we don't have anything to do with it. We would use them to solve energy crises in other places in the world. For instance, if we were to capture all of the associated gases that we flare in a year in the United States, it would solve 90% of the power shortages in all of Africa if we could transport it there and let them burn that natural gas. We burn roughly 11 billion cubic meters of natural gases a year in flaring. And in the United States, those are in 3 key associated gas fields. The shale plays of Bakken in North Dakota, Eagle Ford in South Texas, and the mighty Permian in West Texas. And the mighty Permian in West Texas produces almost half of all of the U.S. associated gases that are flared.
So one place.
One place.
Yeah.
So over the past few years, we have made improvements. From 2013 to 2016, we reduced our production of natural gases in the Gulf of Mexico. And so now only 3 to 4% of all of our natural gas comes from the Gulf of Mexico, when it used to be over 26%.
Yeah, but those are so minor. Any improvement we made is so minor compared to what we need to.
Oh, and also
minuscule.
In my research, one of the most interesting things I found is the modern numbers, the numbers from 2016 to 2018.
Okay.
So companies willingly release their numbers about how much they burn. It's actually not legally required. Companies willingly do this. And in 2017, according to the World Bank, we became the 4th largest country for flaring, up from the 6th, only behind Russia, Iran, and Iraq.
Jesus.
But our own reporting of this is very inconsistent. An article in June 3rd, 2018 in Forbes reports that from 2016 to 2018, we are down 4% of associated gas flaring. But 3 other articles, including one from the Financial Times on July 17th, 2018, says flaring from 2016 to 2018 has rose as much as 7%.
Jeez.
So there's this wild inconsistency, which I think is also a huge problem, that as a citizen trying to educate yourself, these are the places you're supposed to be able to educate yourself.
It's like there's no standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are the institutions that we're supposed to look for information. And
so who was that last bit of information? Who reported that?
That was the Financial Times. Wrote that our flaring production has rose as much as 7%, which is due to a couple things. One, we actually aren't using as much natural gas. So that means that pipelines and storage is holding this natural gas for longer because we're not using it. So the natural gas being currently produced by drilling has nowhere to go because it's filling up because we're not using it. So we flare it because that's the only other option.
Right.
Well, there is talks about burying it, but that's something I'll come to later.
Right. Which is
also idiotic in its own way. And then also the price of oil is up right now, which when the price of oil is up, drilling rises. So because there is more drilling paired with less consumption equals more flaring.
So basically what I'm hearing is that capitalism is going to kill us all.
Yes, that is a large part.
This.
And also in doing this research, it was inevitable to come across fracking, because fracking is another major drilling method that is affecting our environment.
Tell them what fracking is real quick.
Fracking is a high-yield mining. So it is efficient in the sense that we do recover a lot of resources by doing it. It is dangerous in that we use water to mine, and the water is highly poisonous after fracking.
Right.
And so in doing so, we drill miles into the earth, into bedrock, and dispose of the poisonous water that way. And something that has happened recently that we're just starting to study the real effects of is the effects of fracking and seismic activity.
Right.
So in 2011, fracking was halted in the UK because of seismic activity. There was as much as a 2.8 earthquake in the UK, which they directly said was correlated with fracking. So fracking resumed a week ago as of yesterday, which was the 23rd of October.
Right.
And 2018. And so a week prior to that, fracking was resumed. And on Tuesday, yesterday, it was then halted again.
So for 1 week.
For 1 week. They got 1 week of fracking before they had to shut it down again due to seismic activity.
Because they're drilling directly into these tectonic plates.
Yes, which are faulted.
Forcing to shift.
And these are faulted. And what faulting is a type of stored kinetic energy in this bedrock because it's so ancient and under so much pressure that inside these rocks themselves is actually energy. Mm-hmm. And so when we drill into this, we're tapping into it. And it's not necessarily released immediately. It takes time. But obviously not a lot. If you only get a week of fracking before seismic activity. And fracking right now is happening all over the United States. Eastern Ohio, or is it Western Ohio? I forget, sadly, sorry.
No, it's okay. Somewhere in Ohio, some fracking going on.
And all that. And all of these things are basically our lack of investment in infrastructure.
Yeah.
And also, not that these will be long-term solutions, but we're doing these with literally what is the safest way to do it as quickly as possible for as cheap as possible. Right. We're not trying to do any long-term investments, but also that's because these resources are no longer viable long-term.
Well, it also doesn't help that the president of the fucking United States is still, even with the new research,
believes clean coal.
Yeah, even with the new research out that's saying, the Paris Agreement, they were like, okay, we can't let the Earth temperature rise more than 2 degrees Celsius. And now they're saying 1.5 degrees Celsius is catastrophic. And the president of this country, Donald Trump, is saying still that because of his I'll find the clip and I'm sure I'll put it in here, but he has a good sense for science and this is just nature doing its thing.
Oh, 100%. He believes that this is nature's course. That it is in no way human affected.
How can we, and people around him, at least some of them whom he trusts, are agreeing with that narrative.
He's applauded, which is the scariest part.
That's why I can't understand it.
Yeah.
I can't understand it. Like, and here's my thing. I've always said this. If for no other reason, like, what do you have to lose by taking care of the planet? There is literally one faction of people on the entire planet now who disbelieves climate change is a real thing.
Actually, they do have a lot to lose. And that's because it's been almost proven that capitalism has to end for us to fix the world.
Right.
Or the environment. And these are men that have preyed upon the weak via capitalism.
That's true.
Capitalism is the mechanic that lets them make the system work.
Well, and that's the other thing about this. In order for us to reach those numbers, like, and what you just talked about with the flaring and the fracking, that's like that's a big part of it, but it's a relatively small part of what has to be reduced globally.
It is a piece of the puzzle, that's for sure. It is by no means something that could affect. Reducing it is something that has to happen.
It has to be eliminated.
Yes, it has to be eliminated. And 26 countries and 33 companies agreed to reduce flaring to 0 by 2030. We need to do that. Half the time might not even be enough.
Yeah,
by 2030. And we're reporting that our flaring is rising. So, what are we actually doing to reduce these things?
This is literally, there's no more clear an example of putting the value of money over the value of lives.
Yes.
If you don't believe climate change, and I think it was actually maybe it was Mitt Romney, I don't know. Someone said it was a Republican, who said that climate change is or will be the biggest threat to national security going forward. And that's true. You're worried about, Donald Trump would rather talk about a migrant caravan from Honduras than talk about the migrant crisis that has already started and will continue to perpetuate as the climate changes year after year in our own country.
I mean, even the caravan could be said to be one of the first major climate change refugees, even though they're
in this hemisphere,
in this time for our country, because they are running from violence, but violence is going to be a symptom of climate
circumstances.
change.
Yeah, because another thing, when I say in this country, think about this: there are parts now of our coast that are probably uninhabitable, that are completely destroyed at the very least, and these storms will continue.
Of course.
And we'll continue to get battered with rains, and there will be parts of the coast that will be consumed. For California,
they should be deemed uninhabitable for public safety.
Yeah, just for like the Outer Banks, for example, will get battered. The Caribbean islands won't exist.
New Orleans,
New Orleans, in parts of Florida.
Most of Florida.
And it's just and we've had. I saw a video, and I think it was called "Watch Politicians Stumble on Climate Change." And it literally shows everyone from Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., Clinton, Romney, everybody talking about McCain, Obama, everybody talking about the need to do something about climate change, and so little has been done. And now, not only has so little been done, but now you have a guy in office who's trying to roll back the federal protections that were assigned to certain, things like the air and water.
He literally ran on the platform of clean coal. And, clean coal is an oxymoron.
It doesn't exist.
It literally does not exist.
Yeah.
And, obviously backed by oil companies and such and such. And, oil companies have signed saying that they do plan to reduce all of their things. But, none of those things are happening quickly, and I feel like they're going to procrastinate worse than I did in high school.
Yeah. And it's again goes back to the capitalism thing. That's such
totally.
a big, it all comes down to the almighty dollar. And
how many of these people will be dead by 2030? How many people does this barely apply to?
Right. Well,
and they think that it's our problem, and it is our problem. They are right. It is our problem.
It is our problem.
But we can't fix it when the only people in charge are 1% old men that are white and don't care about anyone else other than themselves.
And and I was just about to make a comment about that. It goes again to even our political situation where we're ruled by the minority. When it comes down to, capitalism is. There's this kid on the social webs that I follow. And he and I won't say his name on this show because he's only 16, and I feel like that's even though he advertises himself as a public figure and likes to talk about politics, and he's this right-wing kid from New York. I don't like to mention his name because again, he's a kid. He's 16 years old, but he did say, capitalism is so great because it eliminates poverty. I'm like, that is so stupid.
But that is the kind of things we were taught in school.
Well, it's true, and it's a lot of things. It's the thing that a lot of people believe. Even people who aren't wealthy, they believe in the system of capitalism. But what they don't understand is that poverty is inherent in capitalism. You can't have wealth without poverty.
I remember in economics,
who's poor.
I remember in economics, the moment I realized that capitalism literally
big letters,
literally required a poor workforce.
Right.
That is a huge part of capitalism.
And only a small amount of people can benefit from the system.
Yes. And
now we're seeing, in this late capitalist society that we live in, now we're seeing that not only can only a small amount of people benefit from capitalist society, but it's to the detriment of everyone else. Because when our oil consumption doesn't go down, and our fracking and our flaring doesn't go down, and the temperature of the earth does increase more than 2 degrees Celsius, and shit starts falling apart, it's not going to be the end of the world as we know it. The planet's still going to exist, and there still will be society. It'll be much smaller. It'll be condensed, and you know what? There will be a certain amount of people who will be able to afford safety, and the rest of us will drown.
Yeah, probably.
And that's the logical end of capitalist society. Not to be too extreme, but
I used to believe that world leaders truly were running the world like they believed it was going to end in 2012. Prior to 2012, I used to joke that they're running the world under the assumption that there isn't going to be a 2013, so who cares?
Well, Donald Trump is running the world who gives a fuck, period. Who just gives a fuck? I'm just going to get as much as I can. That's a whole other conversation.
That is how he's running it.
That's a whole other topic.
But to kind of jump back to the environment, and in particular fracking, one of the things that, or not fracking, flaring. One of the things that was kind of incredible to me was how, I know most of my life, I know it was post-Cold War, but we were kind of taught that the Russians were this weird frenemy.
Right.
We're buddy when we see each other at parties, but like when we're on our own, we're throwing darts at pictures of each other on the dartboard.
Right.
But something that is pretty impressive to me is, even though Russia is the leading flaring culprit, they have reduced their flaring the most because they actually invested in infrastructure and things like that to switch mines from old mines to new mines, things like that. So actually, in the long run, they're taking more steps than we are in the current moment, which is what I think is frustrating, that like I don't actually see us taking any steps.
We're not. We are taking steps, just backwards.
Yeah, or just like in a circle. I don't really
backwards.
understand.
I mean, we stepped out. We're stepping out of the Paris Climate Accord, and he's advocating they're rolling back regulations having to do with clean air and clean water and land and all. We're going backwards.
We're
going backwards fast, and it took a long time to get to where we got, and it takes way less time to destroy something than it does to build something, and that's what the fuck would happen. Oh, that's all across the board. But the conversation about the environment, as we just indicated, is a conversation about everything. It's a conversation about everything.
Of course.
It's a conversation about the economy. It's a conversation about war. It's a conversation about the future. It's a conversation about everything.
Well, we've reached a head where everything is totally intertwined.
It's always been, and we just haven't seen the connection as clearly as we can now.
I think back in the... I do truly believe that possibly prior to World War II...
Well,
which seems like forever ago, but it really wasn't that long ago.
We live in a simulation. It never even happened.
God, don't even start that, because then why do we have to save the world?
That's true. That's true. Maybe this is the end. The program is about to crash.
God, I hope so.
Yeah.
But just let's see what's on the other side of the Matrix. I'm even cool with a pink tube at this point.
A giant baby face with a big black man voice.
Just give me a vat to live in. That's all I need, of some pink goo. But
even that world, that's a whole
don't even start with that, dude.
Go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, don't even start
intended.
with that. Don't even start with that fandom. But no, we've just reached this point where we can't separate any of these issues, and due to the fact that one or more of these topics tend to make people uncomfortable,
right,
is why I am not that optimistic on our progress, because people are so uncomfortable with topics of race and equality and social economic equality, not just things like that. And they
tend to think, and this is why I say they're linked, they tend to think those things are separate.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like, because these things make them uncomfortable, they won't even
begin the conversation.
Yeah, begin the conversation about any of them.
Yeah.
Because they know that inevitably a conversation about even the climate could lead back to something uncomfortable.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny you should say that, because, like, for example, if there are areas, it tends to be areas where there's high chemical burnout, or where there's higher, there's greater environmental factors that can increase like, lead in the water, for example.
Yes.
In a city in America, and that's been the case for God knows how long now. Like 5 years, even longer?
Longer. Way longer. I mean, that's just 5 years since it's been the top headline.
And those things, when they happen, they tend to happen in neighborhoods of color, impoverished neighborhoods, things like that. So, like you said, the conversation, if you start with the environment, if you start with environmental circumstances, you end up eventually at a conversation about race and a conversation about the economy, because, as we said, they're all fucking linked. And discomfort, we cannot sacrifice our ability to improve in any of these areas because we're uncomfortable talking about it. I'm not saying, and that what you're saying is 100% true. That's a problem, but it's fucking crazy.
Oh, it is crazy.
It's fucking crazy.
I in no way mean to use that as a scapegoat. No, I do not forgive people for being uncomfortable. I do understand it, but I also truly believe that we're at our best when we're in over our heads. When people are when people are in over their heads and in a place by trial by fire in sink or swim situation.
Literally, no pun intended.
We're actually coming
trial by fire and
right
sink
now.
or swim. Yeah.
I truly do believe that's when humanity is at its best, is when we are in those kinds of situations.
Well, but that's when you have the right people in power and the right type of leadership. And the United States, we've had this conversation before.
I think we're going to see a leader emerge from a very unconventional place soon. I think that we are not going to be looking to conventional...
Like Washington, D.C.?
I don't think we're going to be looking for conventional leadership
for this, but
very soon. And I think we're seeing that in the sense that now more than ever, teachers are running for elected office.
Right.
Now more than ever, women and people of color are running for elected office.
Hashtag Stacey Abrams.
Yes.
At Andrew Gillum. Let's go.
And these are all very positive things. But I think that very soon we are going to see a leader outside of the political system.
Michael Avenatti? Creepy porn lawyer?
I think we're just going to see... I think we're going to see a leader emerge from a civilian standpoint that is not a political figure, but is a very strong leader.
Right.
And that is something that I think we need more than ever. I mean, you can use all the cheesy superhero lines in the world, and for real, we need
a hero.
We don't need a leader, we need a hero.
Yeah, we need a hero. No, I agree, because Donald Trump, I saw something once that they were amazed at all these kids who were standing up to Donald Trump, like the Parkland kids and the March for Our Lives kids, and they're super impressive. And they were like, we grew up with Harry Potter and Voldemort, and now we have the biggest villain in history. I shouldn't say in history. Not in history. One of the biggest villains in our history, though, in American history, at least in his position, for that position. Now, I can't even say that either. Because Andrew Jackson, we have a bad dude. We have a bad hombre. Let's just put it like that. Donald Trump is a bad hombre. You know how I feel about the man. Let's not sugarcoat it. I think he's I don't know if he's evil. No. He's just a fuck. He's just a big old fuck, and we need someone to get him out of power. And that's why this conversation is now coming full circle, because everything, as you said, is connected, including November 6th, which is fucking election day. And if you give a fuck about the environment, or if you give a fuck about trans people, for example, or if you give a fuck about due process or the rights of women and minorities and just really anything, liberal democracy,
even if you care about yourself,
yourself as a human being,
even if you're voting for selfish reasons, I'm completely okay with that because you voted.
Yeah, just fucking vote. Honestly, I there's no study behind this. There's no science behind this. This is just something that I've kind of casually observed. I feel like when voter turnout is high and when elections are close, here recently with these special elections and stuff, Democrats tend to win. We saw it in Alabama with Roy Moore. We saw it in Pennsylvania with Conor Lamb. Those are special elections.
Even if it's Republicans or Democrats winning, one thing that I really do believe in, because I don't really support bipartisan in any way, shape, or form. I think that's one of our biggest problems, is that we only have two parties.
I agree.
And I don't really like to put a lot of...
I wish we had like a parliamentary system, I feel like.
I much rather would put the focus on the issues that they're supporting and what they're backing rather than the bipartisanship of it, even though that is...
They go hand in hand.
Yeah,
unfortunately, when you only have two sides of something, they're bound to become polarized.
Exactly.
They just represent the opposite of each other.
It's becoming worse and worse.
Yeah, every day.
But one of the things that is a positive, no matter who wins, when it's close and voter turnout is high, is that the issues come to light.
Right.
Because even though Trump won, I do think so many issues that were uncomfortable were addressed and are being addressed. And technically, we might not be making the most headway, but like...
Well, I have said... I agree with you in that conversation. If Trump weren't a fucking racist, we wouldn't be talking about racism so regularly now.
Yes.
There's truth to that.
Which is not the best way, but I do try to keep a silver lining attitude as much as possible. That's your
white privilege showing.
It is in a lot of ways, but I also do think that it's truly just me trying to be constructive and not be so frustrated with the system that I don't educate myself, because that's how I was for a long time.
Well, and I think
for a long time I was so frustrated that I gave up and being an educated, up-to-date person. All I did was focus on my own problems, and that was truly my white privilege, was to not educate myself because I was so frustrated. What the hell do I have to be frustrated about?
Right.
I'm a straight, white, mid-20s male. Like, the most thing that I have to be frustrated about is that, like, we don't have socialized healthcare, so I have to pay for my own. Oh, wow, that's hard.
Right.
Like, and it is hard. It is hard. But,
No, it is, right.
But it is not...
Relative.
Yes, theory of relativity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Some E equals MC squared shit.
Yeah, and my E is definitely capitalized compared to most people's. I am way better off, and I know that.
Well, and you're right, and that kind of, again, it goes back to that conversation. You know, white men who make money are the ones who are in power. They're the ones who are CEOs predominantly. They're the ones who run all facets of politics and business and even entertainment. Although entertainment obviously makes more headway than some of the other areas. We're at a crossroads in our country right now. Like I just said a few minutes ago, and I don't think I can beleaguer this point. Like, it's so important that people get out and vote on November 6th. Because, like, in places like Georgia and Florida, you have an opportunity. Georgia might have, correct me if I'm wrong, but Stacey Abrams would be the first black female governor in our country's history. Is that correct?
I don't know enough to say that's correct. I know in Georgia's history.
Definitely in Georgia's history. And Gillum would be the first black governor in Florida's history. We have the opportunity to flip the House. We have a slim opportunity to flip the Senate. And when I say we, I don't mean Democrats, because I'm not like a huge fan of the Democratic Party, but I am a fan of progressive ideas and liberal fucking democracy in this hemisphere and in this country specifically. And I think that the only way we can achieve that, because let's not make a mistake, it's not sensationalist to say that Donald Trump is a nationalist. It's not sensationalist at all to say that, because he said it his damn self.
Yes, and because he ran under a nationalist platform,
right?
Basically.
And one thing I didn't realize was a symptom of fascism and nationalism and all that evil shit was, and I noticed this, but I didn't put the two together until I actually saw a meme, because memes are incredibly educational. They can't be. And if not, entertaining. But I saw a meme that indicates some of the signs of similarities between Donald Trump and other like fascists, at least not specific fascists, but like, fascism, I guess. And one of the things that I saw on that list was, I can't remember the wording exactly, but basically denying any positives to your opponent. Right, so your opponent is evil, and I noticed that recently, like all these like little prognosticators who are Donald Trump sycophants and shit in the media who hope to get cabinet positions since he only hires media people. Your Charlie Kirks and your Candace Owens of the world and people like that. They continuously refer to Democrats as evil, and they continuously refer to them as Democrats, capital D. So what they're doing is they're putting a mark on the target, and they're dehumanizing them by calling them evil. They're basically saying that, we obviously understand the world in black and white, good and evil. So these people are evil. They're the enemy. We're not opponents anymore. We're not. It's like what you said about there only being two parties, and that's what happens. That's the logical conclusion. We're no longer, now we're warring factions.
Yeah.
We're warring factions.
The two sides of the coin, and that's like a real problem, because when you flip a coin, you have like a 0.00001% chance of it landing on its side.
Right, exactly.
Which is where most of us happen to live. I don't think most people are extremely liberal or extremely conservative. I truly do believe most people are a middle of the road person.
Well, and that again is the problem with having a two-party system, is that when it comes down to things like even the environment, it becomes you either believe this or you believe that.
Exactly. And that's why we have people that might not necessarily believe in anything Trump believes in, but they don't believe in anything, but they actively dislike Democrats. So they just vote for Trump because I'm not ever going to vote for a Democrat.
But
and that's the problem.
I get that those people exist.
I said this to people after the Trump election, because I went and to a public space, Pershing Square in Los Angeles, and I gave out art in exchange to talk to people, because I realized what me as a privileged white male who's straight with no real minority qualities at all, it's our job to listen right now, mostly. We have to really just shut the fuck up and listen to what people say they feel, because that can never be wrong. The way that you feel can never be wrong.
Amen.
And so I did that, and one guy really early in the day for me, because I was there for 14 hours, just listening to people talk, and it was mostly kids, actually. I was very blown away at how brave and some of the things that these kids had to say. And it ranged from, let me complain about my teacher, because I didn't care what you wanted to talk to me about, to kids actually talking about real problems. But one guy came up to me and he was like, do you want to hear what everybody has to say, or just people who are sad Trump won? And I was like, no, like, I don't care. Did you vote for Trump? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, do you feel the need to talk about it? And he was like, yeah, I kind of want to justify myself, or like just say it out loud to someone. He was like, I don't really have a lot of people in my life. And I was like, cool, what do you want to talk about? And he was telling me that he really just felt like he couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because he couldn't feel like he was a veteran, and he didn't feel like he could support another bunch of years of drone strikes. That was his purpose. That was his one reason he felt like he couldn't support Hillary. He felt like drone strikes would just go through the roof, and we wouldn't hear about them. We wouldn't know anything about it. It would be this weird, covert thing, which I get is kind of paranoia.
Well, but it's happened.
But it does happen.
It did happen.
And it even happened with Obama.
It happened a lot under Obama.
Exactly. And so I actually empathized with him, and I said, and one of the things I said was, I'm actually happy that you voted that way, because you voted out of love and not hate. You literally can't support us killing people via drones. So, which I get.
But I get that too.
He's totally wrong.
But that's like I said last week.
In a lot of ways.
That's like just like trading. That's like these black conservatives who are like, the Democrats have sucked when it comes down to racial issues, which is true. Let me trade in this Diet Coke for some gasoline instead.
I mean,
yeah, Joe, you don't think Donald? I mean,
totally. I mean, and not that Donald Trump is any better with drones.
I'm pretty sure he's drunk. People have died. Soldiers have died because of his stupid fucking plans.
I know, but it's one of those things where to say that he shouldn't have voted for those because of those reasons is worse to me. Well, and so my only response to him was, thank you for voting, not because you are racist, you hate people. Thank you for not voting exclusively out of hate.
Well, I think that part of the problem, though, with even the election of Donald Trump was that there were so many people for whom his racism, his misogyny, they weren't deal breakers, and I feel as though they should have been. Yeah, people. I feel as though they should have been. They should have been. Those things should be. If you're a decent person who's looking for elected leadership, I'm just speaking for myself. Like, I try to find someone whose values most closely resemble mine.
I mean, really, like, one of the things from that day that I was talking about, one of the things that surprised me was kids. How do you explain to a kid what it means to be a good person when the person we voted as our leader is so clearly everything we were taught is
literally the opposite of everything decent.
Yeah, like
the antithesis of all decency.
I remember one of the things that was drilled into me as a kid
of decency
is if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all.
Donald Trump literally embodies saying the mean shit.
Literally just the mean shit. Yeah, it's like, man, I put a nice tweet up. I should delete that.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe so.
Man, I'm so ashamed that I complimented that person.
Oh my God! You just go on and on about it, and again,
But I still truly believe, because I do believe in everyone's right to vote and their right to have their own beliefs. I do truly believe that as long as you are not voting out of hate, you are doing your civic duty. If you are voting, because I don't care. I mean, obviously, I care who you vote for. And I obviously care how this country goes and how this world goes, because now at this point it's no longer really about our country. Right. But I do agree with your freedom to disagree with where I'm at. But I do not agree with anybody who votes out of hate. Who, when Trump said, let's build a wall, let's exclude all of these people from entering our country, let's be fearmongers, let's look at everyone as a threat. If you voted for those reasons because you want to live in a world like that, I do not agree with your voting. So, if you're voting because of something that Trump said he wanted to better in our country, I actually, and even though there are so few things,
the words Trump and better, when you say it like that, just makes my stomach hurt.
I know, but some people, obviously not the majority, because we all know that old horse. Right. But a large part of the country thought that he could make this country better.
So,
and you can't deny that.
No, I can't deny that people thought that or think that. I can't deny that.
It's hard to imagine.
It's very hard to imagine. But certainly people think that. But okay, that's a perfect segue to the next point then. As we talked about voting, we talked about the environment, and then there's a third thing I wanted to touch on, and it's the issue of Jamal. This is not funny. It's the issue of Jamal Khashoggi.
Well, the way that Trump's handling it is very comical.
Well, so the reporter walks into the consulate in Saudi Arabia and never comes out, except in pieces.
Yeah,
and originally
so they couldn't even recognize if his body was male or female when they found him. That's how grotesque this is.
Originally, the Saudi Arabian government, the prince, who everyone has over the last few... I remember reading articles about him years ago saying how progressive he is. Oh, women can drive in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, the crown prince of Saudi.
Yeah. He was a complicit fucking criminal. But at first they denied it. They denied having. I don't know.
They said he had an accidental death.
And then they said it was an
inside of the
death.
embassy.
Then they said that it was a torture attempt gone wrong. A fight was resulted in his death. All of this was unplanned. And then they said that it was planned, and that or I don't know if they said it was planned, but they were aware of it. And this whole time, this fuckbag doofus of a president of ours, he at first, hey, it sounds good. That sounds like a solid explanation to me. That was his first opinion on the matter. And then I'm not sure if it was yesterday or today, he said, quote, it was the worst. Hold on, I wrote the tweet. I want to read. This is a tweet that he said. This guy.
Well, he only speaks in tweets,
yes,
so of course.
I always speak in tweets. Oh, where did I write it down? Somewhere. It's important that I say this. He said they had a very, and this is the thing that really gets me about his response via tweet. This is the President of the United States, I'm quoting. They had a very bad concept. It was carried out poorly, and the cover-up was one of the worst in the history of cover-ups. He goes on to say, bad deal. Should have never been thought of. Somebody really messed up. At no point in that response does he condemn the Saudi government for the murder of a human being.
Of a journalist.
Of a
in
person.
Particular.
Yeah, a journalist especially.
Somebody who is trying to bring information
Somebody who
to
the president actively advocates violence against on a regular basis. He doesn't acknowledge the fact that they killed a fucking journalist. The president has a problem
with how they planned it.
Yeah,
guys, you suck at murder.
Yes, exactly.
Murder better next time is the moral of the story, guys.
It's not funny because this man lost his life. He was about to get married. He was actually going there, if I'm not mistaken, to get papers pertaining to his marriage.
I believe
sure that's why he was
believe
going
so.
there. So he was about to get married. He obviously has a family, man. He was just a man doing his job.
And he's a very talented reporter.
Very talented reporter who is very critical of the Saudi government, as well he should be. The Saudi fucking government, this is a government that still has, like, slavery. They call it something else, but essentially they have indentured servitude. They are deeply homophobic at their core as a country. Women, like I just mentioned, are only just able to fucking drive.
Yes.
Human rights abuses out the wazoo. And this is a buddy of ours. And a side note, and I think this is disgusting. I like wrestling. I know you like wrestling, not as much as I do. But
I'm a light fan.
Wrestling consumer. A bunch of people in our circle of friends enjoy wrestling. The WWE has they've done business in Saudi Arabia. They have an event. I don't know if you knew about this. They have an event called Crown Jewel.
Ooh, yes,
that's supposed to take place in Saudi Arabia, and it doesn't seem so they're canceling or rescheduling it. And I'm just fucking disgusted by that.
I mean, but like, look at wrestling.
Look
at who runs wrestling.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Apparently, well, and he's a buddy of Donald Trump, and
that's what I mean. Yeah. Donald Trump probably is like doing this as a personal favor to cover up another murder.
Poor execution. It was poorly done, is what he's saying. Basically, all of Donald Trump.
Literally, he's saying murder better.
Yeah, his criticism wasn't that it happened because we have phenomenal arms deals with Saudi, with the Saudi government, so
oil,
yeah, and we would hate to jeopardize those things. So basically, Donald Trump said out loud, and that's another thing. People, if Donald Trump had sent a confidential message to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, and he said in that message, this murder of this journalist was poorly executed. If he said that it was a bad concept from beginning to end, if he said any of those things in a private message that was to send to Prince Bin Salman, I'm pronouncing that wrong, I know. If he sent in a confidential message and it was somehow obtained by the New York Post or the Times or whatever, it would be big news. Washington Post or the Times. It'd be huge news if it was sent in private. The fact that he said it fucking out loud.
That's because he's just become such a boy that cried wolf that, like, you can't... I don't know. I mean, it's scary because he is in a position where everyone should take him seriously.
The position where everyone should take him seriously.
Yeah, and it scares me because I do wonder how the rest of the world acknowledges him. Does anyone take him seriously?
No, I mean, I watched the inauguration.
His supporters take him seriously.
His supporters take him very seriously. I watched the inauguration from Ireland. I was in Ireland when he was inaugurated. I was in Ireland until, it was 2016, right? He became, or 17, the beginning of 17, I guess. And I was there until the middle of March. So I was there for the first few months of his presidency. And watching his presidency through the lens of another country, watching our country through the lens of another country is outrageous. And at that time, people didn't know how to cover him. They didn't know how to take him to international media. It just seemed... I remember watching the inauguration in a pub in the hotel I was staying at, and it just seemed so ominous.
Yeah,
it just seemed so ominous, and that's even like the reporters like, we don't know how to take this. Donald Trump is now the 45th president of the United States, and I was like, and they're like just watching it in awe and like have no idea what to expect. And I think now that they know what to expect, they think he's a fucking joke. They think he's a joke.
Yeah, but you can't.
He's a dangerous joke.
Yeah, I was about to say you can't take him completely unseriously because his position is so serious. Right. So that's why this Khashoggi, I do not know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I think that's right.
Khashoggi,
I think so.
Is so such an important time for us, or such an important event in his presidency.
I think a lot of people thought
he declared his innocence before any investigation at all had been done.
Same with Kavanaugh. It seems to be a pattern.
Yes, there does seem to be. And he, even after the fact, had zero response about any sort of, like, action. There was no, this demands justice, which is what he seems to be all about, is justice. I guess, until all of a sudden, justice comes a-knocking, and he's like,
I don't know what's here.
Who are you?
We're doing the dishes.
Yeah.
It is a funny thing. Yeah, law and order until it's time to actually... but that's obviously his personality. I mean, we know that the Russians interfered in the election. He denies that. He denies... Anytime it's one of his strongman buddies, he denies it. He said that... what's his name? Erdogan? God. The guy from the Philippines who wants to model himself after Hitler to exterminate drug dealers. He called him up, Duterte. So when it comes down to these kind of abuses, when it comes down to this kind of criminality, this obviously... That's fine by him. It doesn't matter.
It seems to be why he wants to be president.
Yeah, exactly. Today, and I saw the headline, and I didn't get a chance to read the article. I'm not sure if it was last night or today. He finally said his condemnation was him saying this was executed poorly.
Yes, that is.
But apparently, he also said something to the effect of, we need to. The harshest restrictions need to be put on, blah, blah, blah. We need to respond, blah, blah, blah. All the bullshit that he says. What I'm noticing is a pattern. He always says these things about, Russia. We need Russian sanctions. We need to respond to South Korea. We need to do this, that, and the third. And it's almost like he talks to these guys and they're like, just say whatever you need to say to get people off your fucking back. And then you don't do anything about it.
Yeah, basically.
That's what happens.
I mean, it's also hard because this is one of... not that I entirely believe this is the case, but like with George Bush... We knew who the puppeteer was.
Yeah.
We knew.
There's a movie coming out about that.
There is.
It looks good.
It does look good. Christian Bale's always good.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just called Vice.
I think so.
Yeah, Vice. It looks great.
It looks really good.
But great in the way that I'm gonna laugh cry. But we knew who the puppeteer was. Honestly, right now, I don't know if it's just that I haven't done enough research, but like I don't know who's really pulling the strings anymore.
I think there's a lot of... I think the thing about Donald Trump is that he is a master manipulator.
I just feel like he's a dog on a leash attached to a tree, not a person.
Well, and so...
There's no other person telling him who to bark at.
But that's not true. There is. Like, your Stephen Millers, he still listens to Steve Bannon. Like, those people who infuse their ideas. Like, all of his immigration policy comes directly from Stephen Miller.
Oh, totally.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the cruelty in which is enacted especially comes from Stephen Miller. The people around him he's an empty vassal, but he has the propensity he's not like it's like the perfect combination of ambition, cruelty. I would never say stupidity because I don't think he's stupid. I think he is almost like a savant, though. I think he has very specific intelligence.
I truly believe he's ignorant.
Oh, he's absolutely ignorant.
He's absolutely ignorant. He is not dumb.
No. Because
he's a master manipulator.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's like a savant. He's really, really, really effective in a lot of areas. And we as a society, as a liberal democracy, we take education very seriously. Let me say this: we take presentation very seriously.
We take schooling.
We take schooling very seriously.
We take schooling very seriously, which is very different.
We take the way that we present ourselves as society very seriously too, and the way that people respond to that presentation.
I feel like we used to.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like his occupancy of the Oval Office kind of flies against that entirely, because what we've learned is that, yeah, you can speak as eloquently as possible. You can have all the knowledge, the policy knowledge as you want. But if you can't connect with the people in a very real, visceral way, then it doesn't matter, which he was able to do, even though he is lying, because he speaks so simply. And apparently, it's really fucking easy to convince people of lies.
Or just, the thing is, he's an actual magician, where he lets you know
he's like Mysterio.
No, he lets you know he's lying. That's the thing. He shows you this lie so that you know he's lying, and then when he tells you this lie, you just don't even care.
Right, and
he's distracting you with the left hand, and you know the right hand's going to hit you, and he's telling you it's going to hit you.
He has an army of fucking volunteers too who prognosticate and do his work for him in terms of like the spreading of disinformation and the painting of the opponent as being evil. This whole migrant thing, like. They instantly said, the second they heard there was this migrant...
Criminals and
terrorists, and it was funded by George Soros. And I only recently found out who the fuck George Soros was, like actually found out who he was.
Same. It took a bomb.
They accused him of funding, he funds every fucking thing.
Apparently he sent a bomb to himself.
Oh my god.
According to some right-wing...
Of course he did. So you have this caravan from Honduras, I believe.
Yes, from Honduras.
Of men, women, and children.
Which is currently at the base of Central America.
Okay, so we're making their way
as far south in Mexico as they can be, I believe.
Okay, so as far south, they're presumably making their way to the southern border.
And currently, the southern border of Mexico, Mexican officials are armed with riot shields, but no one has a gun.
And that's as of 2:00
Mexican officials
Wednesday afternoon.
No, this is Mexican officials at the southern border of Mexico, not the United States. So Mexico's response is they are screening these people. They were using, they had tear gas and shields. They didn't use it. They were just there with it to make sure nothing happened. And no official had any gun or live ammunition. So there was no possibility of that happening. Trump's response is, let's arm the wall with as many humans as possible.
Right.
And, like, we are turning these people away no matter what.
Right. With, like, they're all criminals. The vice president said that it was inconceivable to him that there weren't at least some Middle Easterners mixed in. Which, the fact that Middle Easterner is automatically equated, I guess, with terrorist in that regard is just... I encounter so many people on social media and see people on television who say things like Donald Trump isn't racist. Give me an example of Republicans being racist or Trump supporters being racist. Because I feel like people think that in order to be racist or be considered racist, you have to like go in public and call a black person nigger or call a Hispanic person a spick, or you know what I'm saying? You have to be overt about it.
I mean, but then that some people will excuse them and
well,
be like,
true. But
I mean,
but for that to even be
for somebody to be prosecuted as being racist, you basically would have to lynch someone
right.
with a sign on them calling them
whatever
the derogatory term for that person is, and there'd have to be like photographic proof of you being there
pointing at them, which, and even then that's a sign of the times. This is a sign of the times. So that's my point, like with Donald Trump, like when people are like this is clearly race This is race baiting. If there was a fucking migrant caravan, but if there was a migrant caravan of blue-eyed blonde people from Norway making their way here by boat, the fuck difference would it make? No one would care. Now, That's probably not likely because if you're in Norway, you don't want to come to this shithole right now. But I'm just saying, like, this is clearly fear-mongering. When it first came up, people were like, there were some people on the right who were like, oh, this is clearly a Democrat plot. Clearly George Soros is funding this.
And if
I don't even fucking know if this migrant caravan is actually happening. You know what I'm saying?
And even if George Soros was giving them relief money, good.
Yeah, like they're human beings.
He's helping human beings survive.
And I think that's ultimately, and maybe we can end it on this, because ultimately I do think that's what this whole conversation is about at its core, is humanity.
Oh, 100%.
Is our human decency. Whether we're talking about the environment, whether we're talking about a migrant crisis, whether we're talking about how we regard trans people, it's all about our decency. And this is why it's so important to vote on the 6th, because what we're having now is a battle for the soul of our country. Are we a people who value decency, who value real custom, who value liberal democracy, who value due process, who value justice? Or are we a people who value hatred, who value violence, who value confusion, who value lies, who value deceit, who value racism?
But
like,
even
what kind of people are we?
I really think at the end it's coming down to, do we value humans or do we value money?
Yeah, I guess even simpler than that.
No, it's even simpler than that is how simple it is. It might even be even simpler than that.
Yeah.
But like it's coming down to, do we value humans or do we value money?
Well,
and
I for one vote for humans.
I definitely vote for humans. I really would love to see all currency go away.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting a little crazy here now.
Oh, I am a little crazy.
Well,
bartering sounds great.
I mean, we could have. I mean, honestly, well, in a couple of weeks you can come back. We could talk about the what happens after capitalism ultimately collapses. But that's a whole different conversation, because it won't be pretty and it won't be smooth, and it's going to happen a lot sooner than people think it's going to happen.
Everybody
honestly.
should read DMZ.
Yeah, great comic book series.
Great comic book series if you're interested in what might happen during the Second Civil War in the United States.
Another good one in that same vein is American War, which I've been reading. Also about the Second American Civil War. And I'm not saying that there's going to be violence in the streets, but you know,
we already are coming on a time of violence.
I was going to say,
people were just sent bombs this morning.
That's true. That's true. As of this morning, that is absolutely even talk about this.
Assassination attempts.
The Clintons both and the Obamas and CNN were sent packages that,
and Soros last week.
George Soros, speak of the devil.
That's how I learned who he was.
Yeah, were sent packages that were bombs that were intercepted at the postal facilities, but they never got to their homes.
Soros is dead.
Soros
was actually found in his mailbox. The Clinton and Obama ones were found at separate off-site screening facilities where all of their mail is screened. And then the CNN one was found en route, I believe, to the CNN building. The CNN building was evacuated, and this is the one in New York, was evacuated, and like that's still currently happening. People are currently outside of the CNN building. No one is in there.
So let's
and we have a president that openly calls CNN evil.
Yeah, and calls Democrats evil, including Obama and the Clintons.
And he constantly yells, "Lock her up, lock her up." So here's someone that he is demanding justice for, and this is what happens when he demands justice, apparently. So that's what I mean by it is scary to think that people don't take him seriously, because obviously some people do.
Yeah, very seriously.
And the level that they're willing to take it.
We have to be past the point where we're not taking him seriously, or I just can't believe that this is not a fucking joke.
No, this is pipe bombs being mailed to people that are supposedly considered patriots.
Yeah,
we're supposed to consider these people patriots,
ex-presidents,
and respect them, and ex-presidents,
ex-candidates,
ex-senators.
That's an assassination attempt.
Yes, these are assassination attempts, and so that is very real violence that is happening today. And to say that they were intercepted and nothing happened does not excuse the fact that this is an act of violence.
Right. That's clearly. I mean, I'm not saying Donald Trump didn't say send a bomb to the Obamas and the Clintons, but it's inspired by his rhetoric.
Yes.
Heather Heyer died in part because of Donald Trump's rhetoric. Yeah. Because of his permissiveness to this type of behavior.
I mean, if this was the 1700s and you had a president screaming, kill other people, he would be killed.
Yeah.
That was the law and order back then. You would duel. Somebody would have dueled Trump by now.
Some Aaron Burr shit.
I'm definitely positive that would have happened.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, and we could, and I'm kind of we're going close to an hour, so I don't want to go too long on this, but that's an interesting point you make about if in the 1700s Donald Trump, and Theodore Cruz were running for president, and Donald Trump said that Theodore Cruz's father helped murder a previous president, or called his wife ugly or something, I'm pretty sure that said Senator Cruz would not take kindly to that. There would fisticuffs thrown for sure, or maybe even a fucking duel.
Probably a duel. Probably a duel, because fisticuffs were not.
A little more
they weren't respected.
They would go to New Jersey and shoot it out.
Because the whole thing is about. Oh yeah. They would have been in the marshes, and nobody would have ever seen that body again.
Nowadays, they have fucking Ted Cruz is bending the knee and kissing the ring. So that hopefully he can fend off Beto. And by the way, if you listen to the show in Texas, please vote for Beto O'Rourke. How anyone could think that Ted Cruz is a better option than Beto O'Rourke is beyond me.
What is it? Ted Cruz is the what famous killer did people say?
Oh, the Zodiac killer. And that's another. He called him the Zodiac Killer. Lion Ted. Now he's begging for his endorsement.
Of course.
Jesus, these fucking people make me sick. Please vote. If you care about, like I said before earlier in the show, if you care about trans rights, if you care about the environment, if you
like
care about
humans
fracking,
more than money,
if you like humans more than money, vote November 6th and vote for Democrats and demand better. Okay, that's the thing. Demand better from all political parties. But right now, we just have to get these motherfuckers out of power. That's our show for today. The dog needs to be walked. That's abundantly clear. He's up in our face right now. He's like, y'all.
And we've been angsty enough.
Yeah, the angst has been a solid hour. I am your angsty dad, Earl. This is my friend Mike Jenkins.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here and dropping some true knowledge on us about all kinds of things. Tell him your Instagram.
It's just Mike Jenky, Jenki at the end of that.
So get at him. Check out some of his artwork. And thanks for listening. We out the wild.
Class or hit no pass, don't believe me, then just watch and learn. I don't feel, don't ask, just please or ask, I could really be a bachelor. And when no kids don't spaz on it, I chaz, all the money shuts up on your mouth. It's a good day for cash and bad habit passion, now you in the past tense. I only like when you're talking to pillow, not a prayer running catch a fella. Told you to bring 100 billas, cut his little girl secting some novellas. I don't wanna try love if I'm tangent, I'm like Chance, way better independent. Sometimes I wanna go back to the bando, cause this bitch never hit it with a band's at. Ay, Salah, dollar, make bread, my homie Han Salah. Ay, holla, ballers, spread it out, baby, no butter. Salah, dollar, make bread, my homie Han Salah. Ay, holla, ballers, spread it out, baby, no butter.
Hey, I remember dreaming about the big league, whoa. Now move on with the big things, no. Never could have been a better big three. I always still fiending, get some more green splurge. Spend a pain away like it's morphine, go. Get another rack, then I drag cream, go. Melting on my net vanilla ice cream, go. Melting on my net vanilla ice cream, ayy. Backwards do I say it like I'm Yoda. Feel the boy hopping out Dakota, and I'm feeling colder, cause I jam my lyrics like it's soda. Making money sitting on the sofa, and I'm getting older, but I'm feeling bolder. New flows, big shows, feeling like the owner. Sitting on the game just like a roller coaster. Balling on them hard James Harden with the flutter. Ayy, shut up, shut up. Don't roll your mouth, get cut up. Ayy,
Salah, dollar, make bread, my homie Han Salah. Ayy, holla, ballers, spread it out, baby, no butter. Salah, dollar, make bread, my homie Han Salah. Ayy, holla, ballers, spread it out, baby, no butter.